Alright, so this one time, I was driving home late at night, and the snow started coming down hard. I was on this desolate stretch of highway, not a soul in sight, just me and the snow-covered road. My car sputtered and gave out, leaving me stranded in the freezing cold. I figured I had no choice but to try and find help. I started walking, hoping I'd come across someone or a place to get some help. And then, out of nowhere, I saw headlights in the distance. I felt relieved, thinking I was saved. As the car got closer, I could see there were a few people inside, and they pulled up beside me. They seemed nice enough, offering to help, saying they were heading in the same direction. I hesitated at first, but they seemed friendly, so I got in the car. The folks inside were chatty, asking me about where I was headed and making small talk. But something felt off about them, like there was this tension in the air that I couldn't quite place. They said they were going to a nearby lodge where they could call a tow truck for my car. I thought, great, maybe this won't be so bad after all. But as we drove, the lodge seemed farther and farther away, like we were going deeper into the woods. I started to get this knot in my stomach, this sense of unease. I asked them about the lodge, but they just kept reassuring me that we were almost there. The snowfall was getting heavier, making it hard to see anything beyond the headlights. Suddenly, the car jerked to a stop, and the engine died. Panic set in. I asked what was happening, but they stayed silent, their faces grim and menacing. That's when I noticed something was seriously wrong. They weren't here to help. They had something else in mind. Before I knew it, they dragged me out of the car. They were rough, overpowering me, and I realized I was in serious trouble. They were talking among themselves, saying things that made my blood run cold. I knew I had to get away. I bolted into the woods, running blindly through the thick snow, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear them behind me, their voices echoing through the trees, and it felt like they were getting closer. I didn't know where I was going, but I just had to get away from those people. The darkness swallowed me, and the snow made it impossible to see anything. I stumbled and fell, the cold seeping into my bones. But I couldn't stop. Fear drove me forward. After what felt like forever, I found a small clearing and hid behind a fallen tree, trying to catch my breath. The woods were silent, except for the distant sound of their voices, getting fainter. I knew I couldn't stay there, so I pushed myself to keep moving. I trudged on, my body shaking from the cold and fear. And then, I saw a faint light in the distance. I couldn't believe my luck. It was a house, a small cabin hidden among the trees. I sprinted towards it, pounding on the door, desperate for help. The door swung open, and a man stood there, surprised to see me. I tried to explain what had happened, how those people had tried to hurt me, but he didn't understand. He looked confused and wary. That's when I saw them emerging from the woods, those same sinister people. They were closing in on the cabin, and my heart sank. I begged the man to let me in, but he just stood there, hesitant. I didn't have a choice. I had to get away from those people. I pushed past the man and into the cabin, locking the door behind me. I searched for something, anything, to defend myself with. They started pounding on the door, yelling and threatening. I was trapped, alone in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, with those sinister people trying to break in. I was terrified, praying for someone, anyone, to help me. Hours passed, and they didn't let up. It was like they were determined to get to me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't relax. I just huddled in a corner, clutching whatever I could find for protection. And then, as suddenly as it all began, it stopped. The pounding ceased, and there was this eerie silence. I stayed huddled in that corner, too scared to move, too scared to even breathe. Morning came, and I mustered the courage to check outside. They were gone. The fresh snow had covered any trace of their presence, leaving me alone in that desolate place. I made my way back to the highway, hitchhiking my way to the nearest town, where I could finally get some help and safety. But the terror of that night haunted me, a night I'd never forget, where I narrowly escaped a group of people who had sinister intentions. It was one of those chilling winter nights, and I was home alone, cozied up in my blanket, trying to shake off the cold. The wind howled outside, making the whole house creak and groan. It was dead silent inside, except for the occasional crackling of the fireplace. I must have dozed off on the couch when I woke to this faint sound. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then it came again, a soft noise coming from the back door. I froze, straining my ears to listen. It sounded like someone was trying to open it. My heart started racing, and I hesitated, unsure of what to do. I wanted to dismiss it as nothing, but the feeling of dread settled in. The house was supposed to be empty. There shouldn't be anyone trying to get in. I tiptoed cautiously towards the back of the house, trying not to make a sound. I peeked through the curtains, but it was too dark to see anything. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. I didn't know what to expect when suddenly the noises stopped. I stood there, frozen in place, trying to make sense of what just happened. That's when I heard it, a soft thud from inside the house. My blood ran cold. Someone was in the house with me. I couldn't move. Fear gripped me as I listened intently, the sound of footsteps echoing through the house. They were getting closer, slow and deliberate. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to call for help, but my phone was in the other room. I was trapped, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know who or what was in my house, but I knew I had to get away. I crept towards the hallway, trying to make as little noise as possible. The footsteps were getting louder, closer. Every creak of the floorboard sent shivers down my spine. I was praying for it to be a mistake, for it to be anything but what I feared. Then I saw him, a figure standing at the end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. He was just standing there, motionless, watching me. I couldn't make out his face. It was obscured by the shadows. I called out, my voice trembling, asking who he was and what he wanted. But there was no response, just this chilling silence that hung heavy in the air. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, this gut-wrenching fear that I couldn't shake off. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body felt frozen, rooted to the spot. He started moving towards me, slowly, deliberately. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get away, but my legs wouldn't budge. I was trapped, cornered by this unknown intruder. As he got closer, I could see his eyes glinting in the darkness, reflecting the eerie light. There was something unsettling about his presence, something that sent shivers down my spine. I mustered all the courage I had left and bolted, racing towards the front door. I fumbled with the locks, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The footsteps were getting closer, faster. Just as I managed to unlock the door, I felt a hand grab my shoulder, and I turned, ready to defend myself. But there was nobody there. I was alone, standing in the empty hallway. I stumbled outside, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked around, searching for any sign of the intruder, but there was nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I called the police, my voice trembling as I explained what had happened. They arrived quickly, but there was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of anyone being in the house. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my car, too scared to go back inside. The fear and uncertainty gnawed at me, leaving me shaking to my core. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. It felt like a chilling encounter with something I couldn't comprehend, something that still haunts me in the dead of night. It was a cold winter day, and the kids were ecstatic about the fresh snowfall. I figured it'd be a great idea to take them sledging at the park, give them some outdoor fun. We bundled up in our warmest coats and headed out. The park was blanketed in snow, and the kids were having a blast, laughing and sledding down the slopes. Everything seemed normal until I noticed this guy. He was just standing there, off to the side, staring at us. It was a bit odd, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe he was just taking a walk. As we continued sledging, I caught glimpses of him every now and then, always lingering at a distance, watching us. It made me uneasy, but I didn't want to alarm the kids. Maybe he was just enjoying the snow like us, right? But as the day went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I noticed him following us, keeping his distance, but always there. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, but his presence felt sinister. When we decided to head back home, I could see him, still lingering around. It was getting dark, and the park was nearly empty, but this guy seemed fixated on us. I urged the kids to walk faster, trying not to show them my unease. As we neared our street, I glanced back, and my heart skipped a beat. The guy was following us, keeping pace a few yards behind. My blood ran cold. I tried to stay calm for the kids, but my mind was racing. What did this guy want? I picked up the pace, hoping to lose him, but every time I glanced back, he was still there. It felt like he was closing in, and I could feel this knot in my stomach. When we reached our house, I hurriedly got the kids inside, locking the door behind us. I peeked through the window, and there he was, standing across the street, staring right at our house. It sent chills down my spine. I didn't want to scare the kids, so I tried to act normal, but I was on high alert. I called the police, explaining the situation, hoping they'd send someone over. But as I turned away from the window, I saw him, right there in our yard, staring back at me through the glass. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. How did he get so close? I rushed to the front door, making sure it was locked. I could hear him outside, tapping on the window, this slow, deliberate rhythm that made my skin crawl. The kids started to panic, asking what was going on. I tried to calm them, but deep down, I was terrified. This guy was on our property, and I had no idea what he was capable of. I grabbed a baseball bat, trying to appear confident, but my hands were trembling. I stood there, waiting, hoping the police would arrive soon. The tapping continued, getting louder and more insistent. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. It was dead silent. I hesitated for a moment before cautiously peeking through the curtains. He was gone, vanished into the night. The police showed up a while later, but there was no sign of the strange man. They said they'd keep an eye out in the area, but I couldn't shake off the fear. I didn't feel safe, and the thought that he might come back haunted me. The kids were shaken up, and I struggled to reassure them. I stayed up all night, keeping watch, jumping at every sound outside. The fear of that chilling encounter lingered, leaving me on edge for days, dreading the possibility that he might return. It was a bitterly cold winter night, the snow falling heavily outside. I was home alone, wrapped up in a blanket, trying to keep warm. I wasn't expecting anyone that night, so when there was a knock on the door, it startled me. I hesitated before opening it, unsure who would be out in this weather. There stood a young couple, shivering and pleading for help. They said their car got snowed in down the road and asked if they could use the phone to call for assistance. I felt sorry for them and wanted to help, so I let them in, not wanting to leave them out in the freezing cold. But something felt off. They seemed nervous, uneasy. The guy had a bandaged arm and looked like he was in pain. They were fidgety, their eyes darting around the house. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. I led them to the phone and offered to make the call for them. That's when I noticed they were getting increasingly agitated, whispering to each other in hushed tones. It made me uneasy, like I had let strangers into my home without knowing who they really were. I started to regret letting them in, but before I could do anything, they turned towards me, their expressions changing. The guy's eyes narrowed, and the girl's face twisted into a menacing glare. My heart raced, and I felt a knot forming in my throat. The guy lunged towards me, grabbing my arm tightly. I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. They started demanding things, asking for money, a car, anything to help them escape. The girl was blocking the door, preventing any escape. I tried to reason with them, telling them I couldn't help, but they were getting aggressive. They said they were on the run from the police, and they'd do anything to stay hidden, even if it meant causing harm. Fear gripped me as I realized the danger I was in. I tried to stay calm, to find a way out of this nightmare. I offered them what little cash I had, hoping it would satisfy them, but it only seemed to fuel their desperation. The guy's injured arm was bleeding through the bandage, and he winced in pain. The girl's eyes were filled with a wild determination, and it sent a chill down my spine. They were unpredictable, and I had no idea what they were capable of. I knew I had to act fast. I pretended to comply with their demands, slowly inching my way towards the door. But as I reached for the doorknob, the guy grabbed me, his grip tightening, his eyes filled with rage. I screamed for help, hoping anyone, would hear me. But it was just me and them, trapped in this nightmare. I fought with all my strength, trying to break free, trying to push them away. With a burst of adrenaline, I managed to break loose and bolt towards the door. I ran out into the snow-filled night, not looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear them yelling behind me, but I didn't stop until I reached a neighbor's house and called the police. The authorities arrived soon after, but the couple was long gone. The police told me they were fugitives, wanted for some serious crimes. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation. I stayed with a friend that night, too terrified to go back home. The chilling encounter replayed in my mind, haunting me. The feeling of fear and helplessness lingered, a constant reminder of the night I let strangers into my home, never suspecting the danger they posed. It was a night shift at the hospital, and the snowstorm outside had been relentless. The heavy snow had blanketed the area, trapping us all inside. I was used to these long shifts, but this night felt different, something eerie in the air. The hospital was quiet, the patients resting, and the staff going about their duties. But as the night wore on, we started noticing strange things. Lights flickering, weird noises echoing through the corridors. It made everyone uneasy, including me. I was checking on one of the patients when I saw a man lurking in the hallway, glancing around as if searching for something. He wasn't wearing hospital scrubs, just regular clothes. I found it odd, but assumed he was visiting a patient. I didn't think much of it at first. But then, things started to get weird. Some of the patients were agitated, saying they'd seen someone lurking outside their rooms, someone who didn't belong there. I tried to reassure them, but their fear was palpable. As I continued my rounds, I caught glimpses of the same man, always in the shadows, always watching. I felt a chill run down my spine. He didn't seem like a concerned visitor. There was something off about him. The storm outside intensified, the wind howling and rattling the windows. We were all trapped inside, isolated from the outside world. It was just us, the staff, and the patients, and this feeling of unease hung thick in the air. Then, the lights flickered again, but this time they went out completely. Panic spread through the hospital, patients calling out in fear, staff rushing around trying to calm everyone down. Amidst the chaos, I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way towards the source of the sound. As I turned the corner, I saw him, the man from earlier. He was just standing there, his eyes fixed on me. I asked him if he needed any help, trying to keep my voice steady. But he didn't respond, just stood there, this unsettling silence hanging between us. I felt this sense of danger, this gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, he lunged towards me, his movements erratic and aggressive. I stumbled backward, trying to keep him at a distance. He was muttering something under his breath, something dark and incomprehensible. I yelled for help, hoping someone would hear me. The hospital was in chaos, and it felt like we were all alone, trapped in this nightmare. The man's eyes were wild, and I could see he was holding something, a sharp object glinting in the dim light. I tried to reason with him, to calm him down, but he was beyond reason. He was intent on causing harm. I backed away, trying to keep a barrier between us, praying for someone to come to my aid. Finally, another nurse appeared, and together we managed to create enough commotion to draw the attention of security. They rushed in and apprehended the man, restraining him before any harm was done. The police were called, and they took him away. It turned out he was a patient's relative who had a history of mental illness and had somehow slipped past security. The storm eventually subsided, and order was restored in the hospital. But the chilling encounter with the disturbed man stayed with me, a reminder of the vulnerability we faced within the supposed safety of the hospital walls. It was a night of terror that none of us would soon forget. The day had been perfect for skiing. The snow was crisp, the sky clear. My wife and I were on this amazing ski trip, enjoying the slopes. But then, things took a dark turn. We were on the ski lift when it suddenly stopped, leaving us suspended in the bitter cold, high above the ground. At first, we thought it was just a minor glitch and that the lift would start again soon. But minutes turned into hours, and we were still stranded. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the bitter cold started gnawing at us. Tensions rose among the trapped riders. Some were panicking, shouting for help, while others tried to stay calm. My wife and I exchanged worried glances, trying to reassure each other that help would arrive soon. As the night descended, the biting cold became unbearable. We were ill-prepared for a night on the ski lift. The wind howled mercilessly, cutting through our clothes. The darkness was suffocating, and the fear of the unknown crept in. Hours passed, and there was still no sign of rescue. The thought of spending the night dangling above the icy ground sent shivers down my spine. The group dynamic shifted, people becoming more desperate, more agitated. Some began to panic, shouting and crying for help. Others tried to keep a level head, attempting to calm everyone down. But the bitter cold and the fear of the unknown were taking their toll on all of us. My wife and I huddled together, trying to share body heat to keep warm. But the cold seeped through our layers, and the chilling realization set in that we might not make it through the night. The silence was punctuated by occasional cries for help and the eerie sound of the wind. The darkness was relentless, and our hope dwindled with each passing minute. I tried to remain strong for my wife, but deep down, I was terrified. The thought of spending the night suspended in the bitter cold, with no end in sight, was terrifying. The hours dragged on, and the situation became increasingly dire. Some people were showing signs of hypothermia, their speech slurred, and their movements sluggish. Panic spread like wildfire among the trapped riders. My wife and I clung to each other, trying to preserve what little warmth we had left. We whispered words of encouragement, but the fear was palpable in the air. I could feel the tension rising among the group. Desperation drove some to irrational behavior, shouting and arguing, blaming each other for our predicament. It was chaos, and I felt a sinking dread in the pit of my stomach. The cold was relentless, numbing our bodies. I feared the worst, wondering if we'd make it through the night. Hope felt distant, and the night seemed never-ending. As the first light of dawn broke through, a glimmer of hope washed over us. We could see the rescue team in the distance, making their way up the mountain to our stranded ski lift. Relief flooded through the group, a collective sigh of gratitude. It felt like an eternity, but eventually, the rescue team reached us. They worked swiftly to get us down, offering warmth and comfort as they helped each of us to safety. My wife and I were exhausted, but immensely grateful to be on solid ground again. The nightmare of that bitter cold night on the malfunctioning ski lift would stay with us forever. It was a frosty winter morning, and I was heading to work. The pavements were treacherously icy, so I figured I'd take a shortcut through the grass field to avoid slipping. Little did I know that this decision would plunge me into a nightmarish situation. As I crossed the field, I noticed a commotion coming from a nearby house. Curiosity got the better of me, and I cautiously approached, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on. What I saw sent a shiver down my spine. A woman tied up, and two men were violently assaulting her. My heart pounded in my chest, and adrenaline surged through me. I knew I had to do something, couldn't just stand there and watch. I didn't have time to call the police. I needed to intervene before it was too late for that woman. I crept closer, trying to devise a plan. But as I made my move, one of the men spotted me. Panic surged through me, and before I could react, they lunged at me, overpowering me with sheer force. I tried to fight back, to free myself from their grasp, but they were too strong. I could feel the pain shooting through my body as they relentlessly hit and kicked me. It was chaos, and I was completely outnumbered. Amidst the chaos, I managed to break free for a moment, but it was short-lived. They caught me again, their anger fueled by my interference. My head was spinning, my body bruised and battered. I kept struggling, trying to protect myself, but they were relentless. I felt helpless, the situation spiraling out of control. The pain was excruciating, my vision blurred, and my body ached all over. With a surge of desperation, I managed to push one of them away and sprinted towards the street, hoping to attract someone's attention. But the pain was overwhelming, slowing me down with every step. I collapsed onto the pavement, my body trembling, unable to move. I could hear distant voices, sirens approaching. Relief washed over me as I knew help was finally on its way, but the fear and the pain were still consuming. The police arrived, and paramedics rushed to tend to my injuries. They took me to the hospital, where I lay, bruised and battered, haunted by the horrific scene I'd witnessed. Later, the police informed me that they had arrested the men responsible for the assault. The woman was in critical condition but alive, and they assured me that justice would be served. Days passed, and I lay in that hospital bed, replaying that chilling encounter in my mind. The guilt gnawed at me, wondering if I could have done something differently, acted faster, or called for help sooner. The physical wounds would heal, but the mental scars from that horrifying incident would linger. It was a nightmarish experience that would haunt me for the rest of my life. It was the night of our town's annual winter festival. My son and I were excited, ready to enjoy the festivities. The town square was lit up with colorful lights, the air filled with laughter and the aroma of hot cocoa. As we walked through the lively streets, something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but an unsettling sensation crept up on me. I brushed it off, attributing it to the bustling crowds and the cold night air. As the evening progressed, a series of strange incidents began to unfold. A street lamp flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the square. I saw Mr. Reynolds, our quiet neighbor, standing on the outskirts, his gaze fixed on us. It made me uneasy, but I didn't dwell on it. As my son and I indulged in some festival treats, a sense of unease grew stronger. I noticed Mr. Reynolds again, this time lurking in the shadows, watching us with an unsettling intensity. His presence felt ominous, sending a chill down my spine. Amidst the merry atmosphere, odd occurrences continued. Some of the lights around the festival stalls began to dim inexplicably. The cheerful ambience of the festival was overshadowed by a creeping sense of dread. I tried to distract my son, to shield him from the growing unease. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The night took a sinister turn when my son suddenly went missing amidst the crowded festival. Panic surged through me, my heart pounding with fear. I frantically searched through the crowds, calling out for him, but he was nowhere to be found. Desperation gripped me as I sought help from the festival organizers and the police. They launched a search, but there was no sign of my son. Fear consumed me, and I felt a sense of dread I'd never known before. Amidst the chaos, I remembered the lingering presence of Mr. Reynolds. It felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. There was something about his watchful gaze that unsettled me. I rushed to his house, my mind clouded with a mix of dread and suspicion. I knocked on his door, my heart racing with apprehension. Mr. Reynolds answered, his demeanor calm and composed. I tried to ask him about my son, trying to keep my composure, but something in his expression seemed off, unnerving. As I pressed for answers, he invited me in, claiming he hadn't seen my son. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was hiding something. My instinct screamed at me, urging me to leave, to get away from this quiet, unsettling neighbor. As I turned to leave, a sound caught my attention, a faint whimpering coming from somewhere inside the house. My heart sank, a gut-wrenching feeling engulfing me. I demanded to know what was going on, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. Suddenly, Mr. Reynolds' demeanor changed. His calm facade shattered, replaced by a chilling smile. In that moment, I realized the horrifying truth. It was him. He had my son. I lunged towards him, trying to overpower him, but he was quicker. He revealed a hidden room behind a bookshelf, where my son was tied up, trembling and terrified. I tried to reason with Mr. Reynolds, to plead for my son's safety, but his eyes were filled with a chilling madness. He spoke of a twisted obsession, a dark desire that had led him to take my son. I fought with all my strength, desperation fueling my every move. In the struggle, I managed to break free and grab my son, pulling him away from Mr. Reynolds' grasp. We ran out of that house, fleeing from the horror we had encountered. The police arrived soon after, apprehending Mr. Reynolds. They assured us that he would face justice for his heinous actions. My son and I were shaken to our core, scarred by the nightmarish experience. The once festive atmosphere of the winter festival had turned into a haunting ordeal, revealing a hidden danger lurking within our supposedly quiet community. The winter getaway at the ski chalet was meant to be a relaxing break for my family, a chance to unwind from the chaos of daily life. The snow-capped mountains and the isolated landscape seemed like the perfect retreat. Little did I know that this trip would spiral into a nightmare beyond imagination. The first few days were blissful. We skied, enjoyed the breathtaking scenery, and relished the tranquility of the mountains. But one evening, as darkness settled over the chalet, a sense of unease crept in. There was a knock on the door, a knock that shattered the serene atmosphere. I hesitated before opening it, not expecting any visitors. 3 men stood outside, their faces obscured by hoods, their demeanor threatening. They forced their way inside, overpowering us with an air of menace. My family was petrified, and I felt a surge of fear and helplessness. These men were after something, and it wasn't just our belongings. They demanded ransom, claiming they knew about my success in the stock market, assuming I could pay them handsomely. Their words were laced with malice, and their intentions were crystal clear: to exploit our wealth for their gain. I tried reasoning with them, pleading for the safety of my family, but they were unrelenting. The chilling reality sunk in: we were being held captive in our own chalet by ruthless strangers. Their threats were terrifying. They warned us not to contact the authorities, insisting that they were watching our every move. The isolation of the snowy landscape amplified our vulnerability, leaving us at the mercy of these criminals. We were subjected to psychological torture, our captors monitoring our every action. They confiscated our phones, cutting off any means of communication with the outside world. Fear paralyzed us, and time seemed to stand still in that secluded chalet. The days dragged on, and the situation grew increasingly dire. My family and I were living in constant fear, our every move dictated by these captors. The chilling thought that our lives could be at stake loomed over us. We tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the tension in the air was suffocating. We were prisoners in our own home, the walls closing in on us with each passing moment. Our captors made it clear they were waiting for the ransom, and until then, we were at their mercy. We lived in a state of constant fear, unsure of what each day would bring. The nights were the worst. The eerie silence of the isolated chalet magnified our fears. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows sent shivers down our spines, a constant reminder of our perilous situation. Days turned into a blur, and hope felt like a distant memory. We clung to each other, finding solace in the unity of our family amidst the terror that surrounded us. But just as abruptly as they had arrived, the captors disappeared, leaving us shaken and traumatized. The ordeal had scarred us deeply, a harrowing experience etched into our minds forever. The authorities were notified, and they launched an investigation, but the captors were never apprehended. We returned home, grateful for our safety, yet haunted by the nightmare we had endured. As a scientist stationed at an Arctic research base, life was about routine and meticulous work. Our team was small but dedicated, focused on studying the remote and frigid environment. But our routine was shattered when a group of 4 men unexpectedly arrived at our base, claiming to be researchers from another institute. Their arrival coincided with a series of unsettling events. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, crucial data vanished, and our communication with the outside world was disrupted. Initially, we brushed it off as mere coincidences, attributing them to the harsh Arctic conditions. However, things took a darker turn when tensions between our team and the newcomers escalated. There was something off about these men, their behavior was erratic, and their presence seemed ominous. As the days passed, the atmosphere at the base grew increasingly tense. Our once tightly knit team was divided. Paranoia and suspicion festered among us, fueled by the strange occurrences and the mysterious behavior of the newcomers. One stormy night, a power outage plunged the base into darkness. Panic seized us as we navigated through the pitch-black corridors, trying to restore power. It was then that the true extent of the danger became apparent. We found evidence of sabotage, critical systems tampered with, supplies missing. The unsettling realization hit us: these men weren't who they claimed to be. Their arrival was no coincidence, it was a calculated intrusion into our research base. Fearing for our safety, we confronted the intruders, demanding answers. But they were armed and hostile, refusing to explain their true intentions. It became clear that our fight for survival had begun in this desolate, unforgiving landscape. Trapped in a battle of wits and resilience, we fortified our base, bracing for the worst. The Arctic environment, once serene and majestic, now felt menacing, as if it was conspiring against us. Days turned into a nerve-wracking struggle for survival. We endured harsh weather, dwindling supplies, and constant fear. The Arctic wilderness, typically breathtaking, now seemed like a malevolent entity, testing our limits. Communication with the outside world remained severed, leaving us isolated, vulnerable, and at the mercy of our adversaries. We devised strategies to defend ourselves, knowing that we were outnumbered and outgunned. The days blurred into a nightmarish cycle of vigilance and tension. Each passing moment was fraught with the looming threat of the intruders, their motives still shrouded in mystery. In the midst of the struggle for survival, a fellow scientist vanished under suspicious circumstances. Fear rippled through our already fragile group, adding to the suffocating atmosphere of dread. We were on edge, never knowing when the next attack or betrayal would come. The Arctic landscape, once an object of scientific curiosity, had become a battleground for our fight for survival. As tensions reached a boiling point, a fierce confrontation erupted between our team and the intruders. It was a terrifying clash, a fight for our lives amidst the unforgiving Arctic terrain. We fought with all our strength, driven by desperation and the primal instinct to survive. The bitter cold, the harsh winds, it was an adversary in itself, testing our endurance and resilience. In the end, our determination prevailed, and we managed to repel the intruders. They retreated, disappearing into the icy vastness, leaving behind a trail of chaos and fear. We survived the ordeal, battered and scarred. The Arctic base, once a sanctuary for scientific exploration, had become a haunting memory of our fight for survival against the unknown. As an ice road trucker, I was used to the solitary stretches of empty, icy roads. The winter was harsh, and driving in these conditions required skill and caution. I prided myself on navigating these treacherous routes, but one fateful night would shake me to my core. I was driving along a desolate stretch. The only illumination came from the truck's headlights piercing through the darkness. The snowfall was relentless, obscuring my vision and making the road ahead even more hazardous. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a figure on the side of the road, a stranded traveler, waving frantically for help. Instinct and compassion took over as I pulled over to offer assistance. The traveler, a man bundled up in heavy winter gear, appeared distressed and disoriented. He claimed his car had broken down, leaving him stranded in the unforgiving cold. He begged for a ride to the nearest town, promising compensation for my help. Despite my initial wariness, I felt a pang of sympathy for the man. I agreed to give him a lift, though my instincts warned me of an underlying danger that I couldn't quite place. As the man settled into the passenger seat, an uneasy silence hung in the air. The road stretched before us, desolate and isolated. The only sounds were the howling wind and the hum of the engine. My unease grew as I stole glances at the man. There was something about his demeanor that didn't sit right with me. His eyes were darting around nervously, and a sense of apprehension coiled in my gut. I tried to strike up a conversation to ease the tension, but his responses were curt and evasive. The atmosphere inside the truck became stifling, suffocating with unspoken tension. As we continued down the icy road, I noticed the man fidgeting with something in his coat, an object that gleamed in the dim light. Alarm bells rang in my mind, and I felt a surge of panic. My heart raced as I realized the severity of the situation. I had unwittingly let a potentially dangerous stranger into my truck. I glanced at the man's hands and noticed a glint of metal, a knife. Fear gripped me, but I tried to maintain composure, knowing that any sign of panic could escalate the danger. I kept driving, trying to formulate a plan, to find an opportunity to defuse the situation. The tension in the truck was palpable, a heavy cloud of dread hanging over us. Every passing second felt like an eternity, the road stretching endlessly before us. I attempted to engage the man in conversation, hoping to distract him. I inquired about his destination, anything to keep him talking and divert his attention from his ominous intentions. But my efforts were futile. The man's responses were vague, his focus fixed on the glinting blade in his hand. It was clear that he had malevolent intentions, and I knew I had to act swiftly to ensure my safety. My mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare scenario. I had to outmaneuver him, to find a moment to escape or signal for help without triggering a violent response. With a surge of adrenaline, I concocted a plan. As we approached a bend in the road, I feigned a sudden issue with the truck, claiming a problem with the engine that required immediate attention. As I slowed the truck to a stop, I seized the opportunity and bolted out of the vehicle, sprinting into the snowy darkness. I didn't dare look back, fear fueling my every step as I ran, desperate to put as much distance between myself and the dangerous stranger as possible. The icy winds whipped against my face, and my heart hammered in my chest. I pushed through the biting cold, praying for a miracle, a passing vehicle, or a sign of civilization in the desolate landscape. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted the distant glow of headlights. Relief flooded through me as I flagged down a passing truck, frantically explaining the harrowing encounter I had just escaped. The driver, a fellow ice road trucker, listened intently and immediately offered to help. We contacted the authorities, and they launched a search for the dangerous man. As the authorities combed the area, I was overcome with a mix of fear and gratitude. I had narrowly escaped a perilous situation. It was a winter morning like any other. I was a kid then, around 10 years old, waiting at the bus stop for my ride to school. The bitter cold nipped at my skin, and the icy ground crunched beneath my feet. As I stood there, shivering in the biting wind, a car pulled up beside me, a beat-up sedan, tinted windows. My instincts tingled with unease, but I tried to brush it off, assuming it was someone lost or asking for directions. The driver rolled down the window, and a man, his face obscured by a scarf and a hat pulled low, leaned over and asked me a strange question. He inquired about directions to a street that didn't exist in our town, a name that sounded foreign and made up. I felt a knot form in my stomach, a sense of foreboding creeping in. There was something off about the situation, something about the man's demeanor that sent chills down my spine. I stuttered, trying to respond, but the words got caught in my throat. The man's eyes bore into mine, and a wave of discomfort washed over me. It was then that I noticed another figure in the back seat, shadowy and indistinct. My heart pounded with fear, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as a sense of impending danger gripped me. Without warning, an instinctual alarm bell went off in my mind, urging me to get away. With a surge of adrenaline, I bolted, leaving my school bag behind, and sprinted down the street, my heart racing faster than my feet. I dared not look back, terrified of what I might see. I heard the screech of tires behind me, fueling my terror, my legs pumping harder as I raced through the cold winter morning. The sound of the car's engine grew louder, and I knew they were following me. Panic consumed me as I veered into side streets, desperately trying to lose them in the maze of the neighborhood. I darted into alleys, behind buildings, and through backyards, each step fueled by sheer terror. The frosty air burned in my lungs as I sprinted, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. My mind raced, thoughts jumbled with fear and confusion. I couldn't comprehend why someone would chase after a kid like me, what their intentions were, but I knew I had to get away. My legs ached, my chest burned with exertion, but I pushed myself to keep running. The streets felt endless, the winter landscape a blur of snow and fear. I chanced to glance behind me, and to my horror, I saw the car closing in, the shadowy figures inside visible in the rearview mirror. It spurred me on, driving me to run faster, fueled by an overwhelming dread of what would happen if they caught me. I heard shouts, muffled voices carried by the wind, but I didn't stop. I pushed harder, my small legs carrying me as fast as they could. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a busy street. People bustled about, going on with their daily routines, unaware of the terror I had just escaped. I frantically flagged down a passerby, breathless and in tears, trying to explain the horrifying ordeal that had just unfolded. The stranger, sensing my panic, offered to help and called the police. The authorities arrived promptly, but the car and its occupants were nowhere to be found. I recounted the chilling encounter, every detail etched into my memory with terrifying clarity. The police assured me they would investigate, but the fear lingered, haunting my thoughts long after that morning. I never knew the true intentions of those people in the car, but the memory of that chase, the sheer terror of being pursued, would stay with me as a nightmare I wished I could forget. The morning was frosty, the kind that chills you to the bone. I was out on my usual snow-plowing route, maneuvering through the town's icy streets. The sun had barely risen, casting a cold light on the pristine snow-covered landscape. As I navigated the plow, clearing the roads for the town's commuters, something caught my eye, a dark shape lying motionless amidst the freshly fallen snow. My heart skipped a beat, and a knot formed in my stomach as I approached the spot. I cut the engine and jumped out, my boots crunching in the snow as I cautiously approached the figure. Dread crept over me as I realized it was a body, sprawled face down in the snow. My pulse quickened, and a surge of fear swept through me. I knelt down beside the body, my breath hitching in my chest. It was a man, his face buried in the snow, his body unnaturally still. I reached out, hesitantly touching his shoulder, hoping for any sign of life. But he was cold and unresponsive, a chilling realization settling upon me that he was already gone. Panic and shock clouded my mind. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed emergency services, my voice shaking as I reported the grim discovery. The dispatcher on the line instructed me to wait for the authorities while ensuring the scene remained undisturbed. But the minutes felt like an eternity, the stark reality of the situation sinking into the man lying lifeless in the snow, the frigid air heavy with an unsettling silence. My thoughts raced, trying to piece together how he had ended up there. Was it an accident, a tragic slip on the icy ground, or something more sinister? Questions swirled in my mind, but I dared not disturb the scene, waiting anxiously for the arrival of the police. When the authorities finally arrived, I guided them to the spot where I had found the body. Their expressions mirrored my shock as they examined the scene, meticulously documenting the grim discovery. As they worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease, the eerie sense that something was amiss. The winter morning that had begun so ordinarily had taken a dark turn, leaving a haunting impression on me. The police conducted their investigation, questioning me about the events leading up to the discovery. I recounted my routine snow plowing, explaining how I stumbled upon the body while clearing the roads. They assured me they would handle the situation, urging me to return to my duties. But the image of the lifeless body in the snow lingered in my thoughts, an unsettling reminder of the fragility of life amidst the harsh winter landscape. Rumors and speculations swirled around the town in the aftermath, whispers of what might have happened to the man found in the snow. Yet, the truth remained elusive, leaving an unsettling feeling of uncertainty and fear lingering in the community. The incident haunted my thoughts, casting a pall over my routine, making the frosty mornings feel darker and more foreboding. I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had happened, a sense of unease that clung to me like the bitter winter cold. The mystery of the man's demise weighed heavily on my mind, a chilling encounter that had abruptly shattered the tranquility of my usual snow-plowing routine. The memory of that grim morning lingers with me. The Airbnb we booked was a small, cozy house nestled in a quiet, remote location, a perfect getaway from the chaos of our lives. My wife and I were trying to rekindle our failing relationship, hoping the solitude and tranquility of this winter retreat would help us reconnect. As the snow fell softly outside, blanketing the surroundings in a serene white, we settled into the quaint house, hoping for a peaceful stay. However, the tension between us lingered, casting a shadow over the otherwise picturesque setting. Late one evening, as the darkness enveloped the area, there was a sudden knock at the door. I glanced at my wife, both of us exchanging confused looks. Who would be visiting us in this remote location at such a late hour? As I opened the door, my heart sank. Two unfamiliar men stood on the doorstep, their faces obscured by the dim light cast from inside the house. They were rough-looking, their demeanor unsettling, and an icy wave of apprehension washed over me. The taller of the two men spoke, his voice low and gruff, claiming their car had broken down, asking to use our phone to call for help. The request seemed innocent enough, but something about their presence felt off, sending alarm bells ringing in my mind. My instinct screamed at me to refuse, to send them away, but the desperation in their eyes made me hesitate. Before I could respond, my wife intervened, offering to make the call for them, her voice strained with unease. As she stepped away to fetch the phone, the shorter man's gaze bore into mine, sending shivers down my spine. A sense of dread gripped me, an inexplicable feeling that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The men's demeanor became more aggressive, their stance intimidating. My heart raced as a surge of fear flooded my veins. I knew we were in danger. My wife returned with the phone, but the taller man abruptly lunged forward, pushing his way into the house, followed closely by his accomplice. Panic engulfed me as I realized the direness of the situation. I tried to reason with them, to urge them to leave, but they were adamant, their intentions menacing. My wife and I exchanged terrified glances, a silent understanding passing between us. We needed to get out, to escape from these strangers who invaded our sanctuary. With trembling hands, I grabbed my wife's arm, silently signaling to run. We bolted for the door, adrenaline coursing through our veins, but they were faster, blocking our exit with menacing grins etched on their faces. A chilling realization washed over us. We were trapped, cornered by these two intruders. Panic seized my throat, and a fight-or-flight instinct surged within me. Without a second thought, I pushed my wife behind me, attempting to shield her from the looming threat. The men's demeanor turned hostile, their voices growing louder, demanding our compliance. In a desperate bid to protect my wife, I tried to reason with them, my voice trembling with fear. But reason fell on deaf ears, their intentions clear. They were here for something more than just help. A surge of adrenaline fueled my actions, and I lunged forward, attempting to create an opening for us to escape. In the chaos that ensued, a scuffle broke out, fists flying, and shouts echoing through the small house. My wife and I fought desperately for our lives, but the odds were against us. We were outnumbered, overwhelmed by these menacing strangers whose faces I couldn't even see in the dim light. Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged, a window left unlocked, our only chance of escape. With sheer determination, we made a break for it, crashing through the window and into the biting cold of the winter night. We ran blindly through the snow, our breaths coming in ragged gasps, adrenaline masking the freezing temperatures. The distant sound of the men's shouts spurred us on, urging us to keep going. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we fled into the darkness, seeking refuge, seeking safety. Every step felt like an eternity, fear and desperation guiding our path through the wintry landscape. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon a neighboring house, frantically pounding on the door, begging for help. The residents, startled by our distress, quickly let us in, offering refuge and calling the authorities. As the police arrived and we recounted the harrowing ordeal, relief washed over us. Yet, the trauma of that night lingered, haunting us with the chilling realization that our peaceful winter getaway had turned into a fight for survival, a nightmare that shattered the serenity of our escape. The bitter winter air bit into my skin as I trudged through the snow-covered neighborhood, going door to door, trying to sell my products. It was a tough job, especially in the freezing cold, but I needed to make ends meet. As dusk settled in, I reached a remote house, tucked away at the end of a desolate street. The house had an eerie aura, but I knocked, hoping to make a sale. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a man standing in the dimly lit entrance. His piercing gaze made me shiver, a mix of suspicion and hostility emanating from him. He was tall, with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to hold dark secrets. I launched into my sales pitch, trying to keep my composure despite the unsettling atmosphere. But the man's gaze remained cold, his demeanor unwelcoming. He didn't seem interested in what I had to offer. As I was about to wrap up, he abruptly invited me inside, his voice devoid of warmth. I hesitated, feeling a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach, but the offer felt almost impossible to refuse. I stepped inside cautiously, the door closing behind me with an ominous thud. The interior was dimly lit, the air heavy with a suffocating silence. Unease settled in as I glanced around, noticing the sparse furnishings and the lack of warmth in the house. The man gestured towards a seat, his expression unreadable. I tried to make small talk, attempting to break the tension, but the man remained silent, his eyes fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, his demeanor shifted. His voice turned icy as he started asking intrusive questions, delving into personal details that made me increasingly uncomfortable. I tried to deflect, but he persisted, his probing questions growing more sinister with every passing moment. Alarm bells rang in my mind as I realized I needed to leave. My attempts to excuse myself were met with a chilling threat, his voice dripping with malice. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I glanced around for an exit, my heart pounding with fear. The man's sudden hostility and the oppressive atmosphere sent a chill down my spine. I stood up, my hands trembling, and made a move towards the door, my heart racing with a sense of impending danger. But before I could reach the exit, the man blocked my path, his face contorted in a menacing glare. Panic surged through me as I realized I was trapped, caught in the grip of a stranger's unpredictable hostility. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed past him, racing towards the door, desperate to escape the looming threat. But he grabbed me by the collar, his grip like a vice, pulling me back with a strength that sent shockwaves of terror through me. I struggled and fought with all my might, my mind racing for a way out. Fear coursed through me as I grappled with the man, my instincts screaming at me to break free. In a desperate bid for survival, I managed to break loose, staggering towards the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I flung the door open and dashed out into the biting cold, the freezing air burning my lungs as I sprinted away from the ominous house. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I ran, fueled by sheer terror and the urgency of escape. I didn't dare look back, my sole focus on getting as far away as possible from that house, from that chilling encounter. As I reached the safety of the main road, I glanced back once, seeing the dark silhouette of the house looming against the winter sky. The memory of that terrifying encounter would haunt me for a long time. The blizzard had hit us hard, turning the road ahead into a sheet of ice. Our car struggled against the relentless snowfall, but eventually it succumbed, sputtering to a halt. With no other option, my wife, Sarah, and I decided to abandon the vehicle and trudge through the biting cold. The wind whipped around us as we struggled through the thick snow, visibility reduced to almost nothing. Our only hope was to find shelter before the cold froze us to the bone. After what felt like an eternity of stumbling through the blizzard, we spotted a faint light in the distance, a remote roadside inn. Relief washed over us as we hurried towards the welcoming glow. The inn, though weather-beaten, looked like a haven amidst the desolate winter landscape. We stumbled to the door, our hearts pounding with anticipation of warmth and safety. As we stepped inside, the warmth of the inn enveloped us, and we were greeted by the innkeeper, a middle-aged man with a warm smile. He introduced himself as Mr. Johnson, offering us a room for the night. Grateful for the respite from the storm, we accepted his offer without hesitation. The interior of the inn was rustic but cozy, the crackling fireplace casting a comforting glow over the room. However, something about Mr. Johnson's demeanor felt off, a subtle shift in his welcoming smile that sent a shiver down my spine. But I dismissed it as my imagination running wild in the midst of the storm. We settled into our room, seeking solace in the warmth and safety of the inn. But as the night wore on, an uneasy feeling settled over me. The air felt heavy, the walls seeming to close in on us. Sarah, too, shared my unease, her eyes darting around nervously. A sense of foreboding crept in as we heard muffled sounds coming from downstairs, whispers and shuffling that sent a chill down my spine. I decided to investigate, leaving Sarah in the safety of our room. As I crept downstairs, the once welcoming inn now seemed eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of life. I found Mr. Johnson huddled in a corner, muttering to himself in a frantic manner. His demeanor had changed drastically from the genial host we had encountered earlier. The air crackled with an unsettling tension, and my instinct screamed at me to leave, to get Sarah and flee this place. Before I could turn and rush back to our room, Mr. Johnson noticed my presence. His gaze snapped towards me, his eyes glinting with a manic fervor that sent a jolt of terror through me. His words were disjointed, nonsensical, but filled with an underlying threat that chilled me to the core. Without warning, he lunged towards me, his movements erratic and violent. I managed to dodge his grasp and sprinted back upstairs, my heart racing with fear. I burst into our room, frantic, urging Sarah to grab our things and leave immediately. But as I explained the urgency of the situation, a bone-chilling realization struck us: our room had no windows, no means of escape. Panic set in as we heard heavy footsteps thundering up the stairs, followed by Mr. Johnson's deranged laughter echoing through the hallway. There was no time to waste. We frantically searched for an escape route, but the room was barren, devoid of any exits. The walls seemed to close in on us, suffocating us in this nightmarish trap. As Mr. Johnson reached our door, his demeanor had turned sinister, a twisted smile etched across his face. He brandished a rusted knife, the glint of metal sending a surge of terror through us. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I looked around desperately for anything to defend ourselves. In a stroke of luck, I spotted a loose floorboard, wielding it as a makeshift weapon, preparing to fight for our lives. As Mr. Johnson lunged towards us, I swung the wooden plank with all my might, managing to fend him off momentarily. Sarah and I seized the opportunity, rushing past him in a desperate attempt to escape. We sprinted down the dark hallway, the sound of Mr. Johnson's maniacal laughter echoing behind us. The inn seemed like a maze, the corridors twisting and turning, disorienting us in our frantic bid for freedom. Finally, we stumbled upon a back door, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. With trembling hands, I forced it open, the cold night air hitting us like a wave of relief. We raced into the blizzard, our only goal to put as much distance between us and that nightmarish inn as possible. The blizzard raged on, the biting cold clawing at us as we stumbled through the snow. But the sense of freedom outweighed the freezing temperatures as we continued, not stopping until the inn was nothing but a distant, haunting memory. Though shaken to our core by the terror we had faced, we were alive, our survival against the odds a testament to our sheer determination. The sinister inn and its unhinged innkeeper were now behind us, leaving us with haunting memories of a nightmarish encounter that would forever linger in our minds. The snowfall that evening was relentless, a relentless blanket of white smothering the town, slowing down the already treacherous roadways. I was behind the wheel of my bus, navigating through the wintry landscape with caution, ensuring the safety of my passengers amid the adverse weather conditions. Every turn of the wheel felt like a battle against the elements. The bus was nearly empty, save for a handful of passengers scattered throughout. As the journey continued, the snowfall grew heavier, reducing visibility to a mere blur of swirling white. The windshield wipers worked tirelessly to clear the accumulating snow, but it seemed like a futile effort. One passenger, sitting towards the front, caught my attention. He was tapping impatiently on the window, urging me to speed up, claiming he was in a hurry. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror, sympathetically gesturing that the conditions made it unsafe to go any faster. Another 20 agonizing minutes crawled by before I reached the next scheduled stop. The same impatient passenger approached me, his frustration evident in his voice. He was irate, demanding to know why I was taking so long, his impatience turning into aggression. I calmly explained the hazardous road conditions and assured him of our continued journey, but he wasn't appeased. His demeanor grew increasingly hostile, his words laced with anger and impatience. I did my best to maintain composure, but his aggressive behavior sent a shiver down my spine. As I resumed the journey, the bus trudged along the snowy roads, the wheels gripping the icy pavement with difficulty. The passenger's impatience seemed to intensify with every passing minute. He paced back and forth in the aisle, muttering under his breath, the frustration emanating from him palpable. Suddenly, he stormed up to the front, his face contorted with rage. He demanded I stop the bus immediately, unwilling to tolerate the delay any longer. Panic surged within me as his volatile behavior escalated. I tried to reason with him, assuring him that stopping in the middle of nowhere in these conditions was unsafe for everyone on board. But he wasn't listening. His eyes blazed with an unsettling intensity as he lunged towards me, a glint of something sinister in his hand. It happened so fast, I barely had time to react. His knife gleamed in the dim light, and fear coursed through me as he brandished it, demanding I stop the bus immediately. My heart raced in terror as I grappled with the situation. I realized I was dealing with someone on the brink of complete desperation, a person whose impatience had escalated into something far more sinister. His grip tightened on the weapon, and panic seized the air within the bus. With trembling hands, I signaled that I would comply with his demands, doing my best to mask the fear that gripped me. The safety of the passengers was paramount, and I prayed for a solution to present itself. Just as I prepared to pull over, a sudden commotion erupted from the back of the bus. Passengers rallied together, restraining the aggressive man, and managed to disarm him. Amidst the chaos, someone had managed to contact the authorities. With the situation diffused, the man was apprehended, and the police arrived swiftly. Relief washed over me as the authorities took charge of the situation, bringing an end to the harrowing ordeal. The bus was cleared, and the passengers, visibly shaken but unharmed, were safely escorted away. I remained in a daze, the chilling encounter replaying in my mind. The thought of how close the situation had come to a devastating outcome left me rattled, my hands still trembling from the adrenaline rush. As I resumed my route, the snowy landscape blurred outside the bus window, a stark reminder of the chilling encounter I had just survived. I was looking forward to a quiet evening alone, just me, the warmth of my home, and a hot pizza. It was a bitterly cold winter night, the kind that makes you crave comfort food. So, I placed an order for a pizza delivery and settled in, the soft glow of the fireplace casting dancing shadows across the room. As I waited for the delivery, I occupied myself with mundane tasks, trying to pass the time until the familiar ring of the doorbell signaled the arrival of my dinner. The minutes dragged on, and I grew increasingly restless, the anticipation mingling with the eerie silence of the house. Finally, the doorbell chimed, breaking the stillness. I hurried to the door, eager for the warmth of the pizza and the promise of a relaxing evening. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouette of a figure standing on my porch, bundled up against the cold. I opened the door, expecting the familiar sight of a delivery person. However, the man who stood before me wasn't the typical pizza delivery guy I was used to. His demeanor was off, something about his presence sending a shiver down my spine. He was shrouded in a heavy coat, the hood pulled low over his eyes, obscuring his features. Despite the biting chill outside, a peculiar coldness seemed to emanate from him, an unsettling aura that seemed out of place. He held the pizza box awkwardly, almost as if it were a foreign object to him. His eyes, barely visible under the hood, seemed to bore into me, sending an instinctual warning that something was amiss. I forced a polite smile, reaching for the pizza, eager to be rid of the uneasy encounter. But as I extended my hand, a strange feeling washed over me, a feeling that something wasn't right. His movements were jerky, his hands trembling as he handed over the box. My heart raced with an inexplicable sense of dread, a primal instinct urging me to shut the door and lock it tight. But I dismissed it as paranoia, chalking it up to the lateness of the hour and the isolation of being home alone. As I took the pizza box, our eyes met for a brief moment. His gaze was piercing, a chilling intensity that sent a jolt of fear down my spine. I mumbled a thanks, quickly retreating back into the safety of my home, eager to put the unnerving encounter behind me. I tried to shake off the unease as I set the pizza down on the kitchen counter, but an overwhelming feeling of discomfort lingered. I realized that I hadn't paid the delivery person yet, and I rushed back to the door, hoping to complete the transaction and bid the stranger farewell. To my surprise, there was no sign of him outside. The porch was empty, the biting wind swirling snowflakes in the darkness. I scanned the area, but he was nowhere in sight. A chill ran down my spine as I considered the unsettling possibility that he might still be lingering nearby. Concern gnawed at me. Why had he left so abruptly? Had he been watching the house? The unsettling encounter left me on edge, my mind racing with unsettling thoughts. I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, an irrational fear taking hold. As I returned to the kitchen, the pizza sat untouched on the counter, my appetite gone. The events of the encounter replayed in my mind, the sense of foreboding growing with each passing moment. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I contemplated calling the pizza place to report the odd encounter, but I hesitated, not wanting to sound paranoid. Instead, I tried to distract myself, hoping to brush off the unease that lingered like a shadow in my home. The minutes ticked by slowly, the silence of the house weighing heavily on me. My senses were on high alert, every creak or rustle sending a jolt of fear through me. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the silence, a tapping against the window. My heart leaped into my throat, my pulse quickening as I strained to identify the source of the noise. I approached the window cautiously, the dread mounting with each step. Through the frost-covered glass, I glimpsed a figure standing outside in the darkness. It was him, the delivery guy. But something was horribly wrong. His hood had fallen back, revealing a face twisted into an expression of malevolence. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with an unsettling intensity that froze me in terror. He pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass as he mouthed something unintelligible. Fear gripped me, rendering me motionless as I watched his frantic gestures. Without warning, he raised a hand, tapping on the window with an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. I stumbled backward, scrambling away from the window, my mind racing with panic. What did he want? Why was he back? My first instinct was to call the police, but fear paralyzed me. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling violently. In a surge of desperation, I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I relayed the chilling encounter to the dispatcher. As I waited for help, my eyes darted towards the window, dreading what I might see. The figure was gone, leaving only the empty darkness of the winter night. The minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity as I huddled in fear, the seconds ticking by. The distant wail of sirens broke the silence, signaling the arrival of the police. Relief flooded through me, accompanied by a lingering sense of dread. The officers arrived swiftly, their presence a welcome sight in the midst of the chilling ordeal. I recounted the harrowing encounter to them, the fear and anxiety pouring out in a jumble of words. They conducted a thorough search of the area, but there was no trace of the mysterious pizza delivery guy. They assured me they would patrol the neighborhood and investigate further. As the police took my statement, I couldn't shake off the feeling of vulnerability, the fear that the encounter might not be over. The night dragged on, the events replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The police advised me to stay vigilant and keep my doors locked. They promised to increase patrols in the area and assured me of their continued vigilance. Despite their reassurances, the sense of unease lingered, leaving me on edge for the rest of the night. As dawn broke, a sliver of relief washed over me. The night of terror seemed to have passed, but the chilling memory of the encounter would stay with me. The winter storm hit us out of nowhere, trapping my daughter, Emily, and me on a desolate, snow-covered road in the middle of nowhere. Our car had skidded off the icy path, leaving us stranded with no hope of immediate rescue. The swirling snowflakes obscured the road ahead, and the biting cold seeped into our bones. As the snowfall intensified, we trudged through the blizzard, seeking refuge from the brutal weather. In the distance, we spotted faint lights, the glimmer of hope in the form of a remote farmhouse. Relief washed over us as we approached, hopeful for warmth and shelter. We knocked on the door, shivering from the frigid temperatures. A middle-aged man greeted us, offering a warm smile and inviting us inside. He introduced himself as Mr. Peterson, explaining that his family was hosting a small gathering and welcomed us to join them until the storm subsided. Grateful for the hospitality, Emily and I accepted their invitation, stepping into the cozy farmhouse. The warmth embraced us, providing a reprieve from the harsh winter outside. The family seemed amiable, gathered around a crackling fireplace, exchanging stories and laughter. However, as the night wore on, a sense of unease crept in. The jovial atmosphere of the gathering gradually turned unsettling. The family members' behavior appeared odd, their smiles lingering a little too long, their eyes carrying an unsettling glint that I couldn't quite decipher. Emily and I exchanged uneasy glances, sensing something was amiss, but we couldn't pinpoint the source of our discomfort. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling relentlessly, making it impossible to leave. As the night progressed, the family's demeanor shifted, their gestures growing more intrusive. They insisted we stay for dinner, and though hesitant, we accepted their offer, trying not to offend our hosts. The dinner was an uncomfortable affair. The family's behavior became increasingly peculiar, their questions probing, their gazes intense. I noticed subtle hints of aggression beneath their seemingly welcoming facade, sending a shiver down my spine. I whispered to Emily that we should leave, but before we could make a move, Mr. Peterson blocked our path, his demeanor turning menacing. His smile faded, replaced by a chilling glare that set off alarm bells in my mind. He insisted that leaving in such harsh weather was impossible and urged us to stay the night. Emily and I exchanged alarmed glances, the sense of danger palpable in the air. With no other viable option, we reluctantly agreed, trying to mask our growing fear. As the night deepened, our unease turned into terror. We noticed strange, furtive glances exchanged among the family members, their whispers growing hushed and secretive. Emily clung to my arm, her eyes wide with fear, narrowing my own apprehension. In the dead of night, as we pretended to sleep, we overheard a chilling conversation. The family members spoke in hushed tones about disposing of unwanted guests, their words sending a surge of panic through us. Emily's hand trembled in mine, fear gripping us in its icy clutches. Realizing the danger we were in, I knew we had to escape. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, but it was missing. Panic surged within me as I realized our means of calling for help had vanished. We devised a plan to slip out quietly while the family slept, but as we made our way towards the door, a creak echoed through the silent house. Mr. Peterson stood in the hallway, a cold, calculating expression on his face, blocking our escape route. He approached us slowly, his eyes glinting with malice, confirming our worst fears. The family's hospitality had been a ruse, a facade to lure unsuspecting travelers into a trap. Emily and I braced ourselves for the worst, our hearts pounding with terror. But just as Mr. Peterson reached out, a sudden knock on the door shattered the eerie silence. It was the sound of rescue, a search party that had been looking for stranded travelers in the blizzard. The family's facade crumbled as they realized their plan had been foiled. With no choice, they allowed us to leave, their expressions twisted with fury and defeat. Emily and I rushed into the safety of the rescue team's arms, relieved and shaken by the nightmarish encounter. The chilling realization of how close we had come to becoming victims of something far more sinister haunted us as we finally found refuge from the storm. The winter air was biting as our team of explorers set out on a treacherous expedition through uncharted territories. We were a diverse group, brought together by a shared passion for adventure and discovery. The plan was to navigate the harsh wilderness, mapping out unexplored areas and pushing the boundaries of our knowledge. Our leader, Dr. Thomas, was an experienced explorer, revered for his expertise in extreme terrains. We trusted him implicitly, relying on his guidance to navigate the unforgiving landscape. The journey had been grueling, the biting cold and treacherous conditions testing our endurance. However, as the days passed, tension simmered within our group. There were disagreements about the route, the supplies, and the relentless cold that seemed to seep into our bones. Some of us were on edge, the isolation and harsh conditions taking a toll on our spirits. As we ventured deeper into uncharted territories, suspicions began to brew among us. Whispers of betrayal and deception circulated within the group, casting shadows of doubt on our mission and our companions. I couldn't pinpoint the source of the unease, but there was a sense of something being off-kilter, an underlying tension that seemed to grow with each passing day. One frigid evening, during our campsite setup, I overheard heated conversations between some members of our team. Their voices were hushed, but the animosity in their words was palpable, hinting at a rift that threatened to tear our group apart. I confronted Dr. Thomas about the growing discontent within our ranks, hoping to quell the rising tension. But he remained cryptic, evading my questions with a steely determination that left me feeling unsettled. As the days wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense, our once cohesive team now fractured by suspicion and distrust. The biting cold seemed to mirror the icy tension among us, our unity crumbling under the weight of mistrust. One fateful night, as we huddled around a flickering campfire, a startling revelation emerged. It was revealed that someone among us had been secretly tampering with our essential supplies, sabotaging our provisions. The accusation sent shockwaves through our group, sowing seeds of fear and paranoia. Dr. Thomas attempted to quell the rising panic, urging us to remain united in the face of adversity. But the damage was done, suspicion hanging heavy in the frigid air. With each passing day, the sense of unease escalated. We were on edge, constantly watching each other, unsure who among us could be the traitor, the one threatening our survival in this harsh wilderness. As the biting cold continued to gnaw at us and our supplies dwindled, desperation set in. We became more divided, each member wary of the other, the once unified team now fractured by fear and mistrust. One morning, I awoke to a chilling discovery. Dr. Thomas, our revered leader, was missing. Panic surged through the group as we searched frantically for any sign of him. His absence cast a shadow of uncertainty and fear among us, leaving us vulnerable and exposed in the merciless winter landscape. The realization hit us hard. Our leader, the one we had entrusted our lives to, had vanished without a trace. The sense of betrayal and deception was palpable, sending shockwaves of fear through our dwindling group. As we pressed on, navigating a brutal terrain without our leader, the atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. Accusations flew, fingers pointed, and mistrust festered among us like a festering wound. Amidst the chaos, an ominous storm brewed on the horizon, threatening to engulf us in its wrath. The relentless cold intensified, snow and wind whipping at our exposed faces, our situation growing increasingly dire. With our provisions depleted and tensions escalating, the bitter cold and harsh conditions became our greatest adversaries. The fear of betrayal from within our own ranks loomed larger than the unforgiving wilderness surrounding us. As we struggled to survive, battling not just the elements but also the betrayal that had fractured our group, a chilling realization dawned on us: we were in a fight for our lives, against both nature and the unseen threat lurking among us. The betrayal within our team had turned our once thrilling expedition into a nightmarish fight for survival in the heart of a merciless winter. Despite the overwhelming odds stacked against us, we refused to succumb to the darkness that threatened to engulf us. With determination burning in our hearts, we rallied together, striving to maintain some semblance of unity amidst the chaos and suspicion. In the face of the relentless storm and dwindling supplies, we held on to a sliver of hope, clinging to the belief that we could overcome the treacherous circumstances that had befallen us. With an unwavering resolve to survive, we focused on finding a way out of the bleak situation. Hours turned into days as we forged ahead, enduring the biting cold and relentless blizzard, our spirits battered but not broken. Through sheer perseverance and solidarity, we managed to uncover traces of Dr. Thomas's whereabouts. It turned out that he had ventured ahead, seeking help from a nearby outpost due to an emergency. His sudden absence had been a misunderstood act of necessity, not betrayal. Relief flooded through our team as we learned the truth. It was a bittersweet realization, knowing that our leader hadn't abandoned us but had ventured out to seek aid for our beleaguered group. Bolstered by this revelation, we united our efforts, working tirelessly to navigate the harsh wilderness and survive the unforgiving elements. We forged ahead, each step forward a testament to our resilience and determination. Despite the odds stacked against us, we managed to push through the relentless storm and the mistrust that had threatened to tear us apart. The unity we once shared slowly began to resurface, bringing a glimmer of hope amidst the desolate landscape. Days stretched into what felt like an eternity, but our unwavering perseverance finally paid off. Through sheer determination and unyielding teamwork, we stumbled upon a remote outpost, a beacon of safety amidst the relentless blizzard. As we entered the sanctuary of the outpost, relief washed over us like a warm embrace. We were safe, rescued from the clutches of the unforgiving wilderness that had tested our limits and unity. Our journey had been harrowing, an arduous test of survival and camaraderie in the face of treacherous conditions. But against all odds, we emerged from the perilous ordeal, alive and stronger than ever, a testament to the unbreakable resilience of the human spirit. The chilling betrayal and deception that had threatened to tear us apart had ultimately strengthened our bond, solidifying our determination to overcome adversity together. And though the haunting memories of that treacherous expedition would linger, we emerged victorious, standing united against the merciless forces that sought to challenge our survival.